Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Moving Forward in the Spirit. Last week, I shared with you that the Spirit-filled life begins with prayer. Prayer is a great way, among many other ways, to spend time with God. And when you spend more time with God in prayer, what happens is we begin to realize things in our own life that really don't line up with God. It might be sinful behaviors, it might be besetting behaviors, it could be a bad mindset, but we begin to compare and contrast. We realize how perfect and awesome God is, and we begin to see where we don't quite measure up to what God is calling us to strive towards. And the reality is, in the book of Acts, the early church was in a prayer meeting. I talked to you about that recently. And when they began to address their need for moving forward after the betrayal of Judas. So Judas, as we know, betrayed Christ, and that didn't end well for him. And so now they're saying, how are we going to move forward? And they're in a prayer meeting. And I propose to you that each of us needs to deal with any type of Judas behaviors, mindsets, beliefs, lifestyles. And what I mean by that is, if there's anything on the inside of us that's causing us to live, think, or act in ways that are betraying Christ and not being fully Christ-like, we need to deal with that because it's diminishing our witness. And so in times of prayer, it's common for God to kind of point these things out privately to us, which is much better than publicly, don't you think? And so He begins to shine the light on things in our heart and our mind, our behavior, our life. And what happens is we begin to recognize these things. Then we begin to confess and agree with God in prayer about these things. We ask God to help us to change our mind and change the way that we behave, the way that we behave, and then we keep moving forward in the Spirit. A lot of people don't move forward in the Spirit because when God reveals those things, they just kind of ignore and put it in the shelf. You can't do that. I want you to just say, Lord, here I am. Show me. Reveal to me. Help me to agree with you in prayer, to confess. Help me to say, God, help me to change my mind. Help me to change my behavior. And He will do it. That's how you keep moving forward in the Spirit-filled life. But listen, changing our mind and changing our behavior is never an easy thing. It's almost always a challenge. But here's some good news for you. This is where God steps into our life and lives in big ways within us. You see, it's in this next step in our journey, or our renewed journey in the Spirit-filled life, that we begin to see God do some amazing things. You see, as we step forward, as we move forward, as we say, okay, God, I recognize that, I confess it, I'm asking you to forgive me, and I'm moving on, I'm not going to do that anymore, and I'm asking you to change the way I think and the way I live, God has something great in store for us. And so let me read to you from Acts chapter 1, verse 24 to 26, and I'll come right back to that thought. And here's what it says. And they prayed and said, You, O Lord, who know the hearts of all, show which of these two you have chosen to take part in this ministry and apostleship, from which Judas by transgression fell, that he might go in his own place. And they cast their lots, and the lot fell on Matthias, and he was numbered with the 11 apostles. So here we have the situation where they were 12 disciples, and then they had to, okay, this has to go. Judas went his way. He made that decision. We make a decision to say, no, I'm not going to talk that way. I'm not going to think that way anymore. I'm not going to behave that way anymore. I'm agreeing with God. God's going to help me. And then God gives us a Matthias moment. And what I mean by that is Matthias literally means gift of God. I want you to think about that. Gift of God. The disciples had a betrayer amongst them, and sometimes we betray ourselves or betray Christ by the way we think, act, and talk, and do and live. And as soon as we confess that and get rid of that, God says, I'm going to give you a Matthias. I'm going to give you a gift of God. You see, a gift of God to the New Testament church was Matthias, another apostle, another disciple to continue that ministry. And in the same manner, as we keep moving forward in the Spirit, as we deal with our own Judas issues, if you will, deep within, God is going to manifest His gift within us. You say, what gift is that? Well, it's the gift to actually change your mind and mean it and begin doing it. We can't always do that on our own, but God gives us this incredible gift. It's just of a renewed mind and and thinking differently and behaving differently. And then with that comes not just the indwelling of the Holy Spirit, but the baptism of the Holy Spirit, or what's known as the gift of the Holy Spirit. And that is like this gift with all kinds of gifts on the inside called the gifts of the Spirit. I don't have time to talk about all that today, but here's what I want you to know. As you begin to spend more time with God in prayer, He's going to reveal things. And it's not to make you feel bad about yourself or anything else, but it's to get you to agree with God that, hey, this is who I am, but this is who you're calling me to be, and you're calling me to be more like Christ. And as you do that, all kinds of gifts are going to be deposited into your life. The gift to be able to change, the spiritual gifts of the manifest gifts of the Spirit, and even blessings and gifts and all kinds of new things will come into your life. I've seen hobbies come into my life. I've seen different things that bring me joy that come into my life, and they're all gifts from God, but it all began in prayer when I realized I needed to be more like Jesus and less like the old Andy that I used to be. I hope this encourages you. I've got so much more to share, and I look forward to seeing you this Sunday at MCOG at 10:30 a.m. in person or online as we continue moving forward in the Spirit.